The stage is set for the final round of voting. Ballots have opened across the nation and people will soon decide who will become the next president of France. The choice is between two leaders with starkly different ideologies. We have incumbent president and centrist leader Emmanuel Macron and on the other hand far-right rival Marine Le Pen. The presidential debate was proof that they differ on almost every sphere. Macron is looking to secure a second consecutive term, something that has not happened in the last 2 decades. Under Macron, France has seen many predictable and unpredictable crises, the Yellow Vest protests, COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing war in Europe. So it will be interesting to see if the French people put their trust in Macron again. And for more on this, we're now being joined by WION correspondent Rosie Burchard from Paris. Thank you so much for joining us. Rosie, can you begin by telling us what the mood is like in Paris right now? President Macron is also set to address the supporters. What can you tell us?
The city of Paris, where I am, is just waking up. Polls have opened just in the last half hour or so. This is a polling station right behind me, and the French are beginning to line up to choose who will be the next leader and who they will give the keys of the Elysee Palace to. Some of the voters I've been speaking to say that they feel it's very important to exercise that right to vote, and they fear that some will not vote at all and that turnout might be low. In the first round it was at around 73%, but it is the school holidays here, which means some people are simply unavailable. And we know that some people will politically choose to either spoil their ballot or not show up to vote because they want neither Macron or Le Pen taking over the presidency. So lots of question marks and a mood which is somewhat tense, but also just, a capital city waking up, cafes opening and polls opening now as the French choose their next leader.
Absolutely, Rosie. In fact, I was just going to come to that. Trends tell us that Macron is still leading the opinion polls. However, there is, as you mentioned, uncertainty due to the large number of undecided voters and, of course, Jean-Luc Mélenchon's voter base. Is there any clarity on that?
There is no clarity on that, Haim. So far, the polls on Friday before the campaigning ended showed that Macron was looking to secure around 55 to 57% of the vote, so that would mean he would win. However, it is much tighter margin than what we saw in 2017 when Macron secured a real landslide victory in 2/3 of the vote. Now, you mentioned the leftist candidate Jean-Luc Mélenchon. In the first round of these elections, he managed to secure around 1 in 5 votes. So the big question is, where will his voters go? And while he urged them not to give one single vote to the challenger Marine Le Pen, he also didn't explicitly endorse Emmanuel Macron, the incumbent candidate, and that's why we believe that around 2/3 of his supporters say they will either spoil their ballot or simply not show up at all. And that's also why both of those candidates, Macron and Le Pen, have been courting the left. For the last 2 weeks of their voting, they've been going to left strongholds in the country to try and get some of those votes back from Jean-Luc Mélenchon and into the ballot boxes with their names on them. So it's also why we saw both candidates calling on all voters to show up and to cast their votes and to express their opinion no matter what it is.
Right, absolutely. Now, we've also seen Le Pen soften her stance on some of her staunch far-right policies. Do you think she's been able to effectively get to communicate her policies to the people of France?
Well, some analysts say that Le Pen has actually been able to present herself as a candidate which is less from the far right and more toward the centre, simply by virtue of there being an even further right candidate in the first round, Éric Zemmour. Some analysts say that he allowed Marine Le Pen to really present her policies in a more credible light. Now, you mentioned some of those seen as very, very far right. For example, one of her policies would be to ban Muslim women from wearing headscarves. That's something which would be hard to see how it could sit alongside anti-discrimination legislation at EU level. Now, she has, however, presented other policies which are, of course, attracting voters, nationalist policies and some proposals to favour French citizens over dual nationals or non-French nationals living here in France when it comes to access to services. That's something which, of course, some people who feel they've lost out over the last 5 years and even before are attracted to, and that's why she's gathering, a good half of the vote here. Even if Macron does secure that 55%, that will still be 45% in favour of Le Pen, and that's something which is worrying for at least officials in multilateral institutions a bit further away, for example in Brussels and the EU and NATO. They're wondering who will be the next person to have a seat at the table, because a Le Pen presidency would mean a seismic shift in foreign policy as well.
Absolutely. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.